anytime you have a small win, showing up to school every day on time for a whole week is a small win for some students, right? Being told that they're loved by someone is a small win. Or just being able to turn in an assignment and the teacher said you did a good job. That's a small win. So take a selfie and then edit that selfie, describe what that small win was, and save it in your phone. Because some days we know that life happens. And when you need some encouragement, you can always look back at that time when you celebrated a small win, because those small wins turn into greater gains, and greater gains turn into big.
This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Daron Franklin, known as Coach Frank, brings over 2 decades of experience in education, athletics, and personal development, and now owns F42 Empowerment. His insights on human performance and empowerment will give us some valuable perspectives to address some of our most pressing issues as K-12 educators. So, Coach Frank, recent research says that 47% of teachers consider students showing little to no interest in learning as a major problem in their classrooms. You work with human performance coaching and motivation. You talk to students about motivation. What's your advice to teachers for where they start for helping improve student motivation?
From the background of coaching and teaching Algebra I, had a difficult job, right? Not everybody signs up to be the math teacher and the football coach. So I found out that the particular strategies that I used on the field were the same in the classroom and vice versa. Number one, I made it my mission about learning who those kids were, who my students were during the first week of school. And some of my colleagues could not understand, like, hey, coach, you're not getting into the scope and sequence of things. Like, no, I want these kids to tell me who they are indirectly, and I'm going to tell them who I am. So the first thing I would always share with teachers is make sure that you're practicing your classroom procedures that first week of school. And I really mean the first 5 days before you get into the content. Within those procedures, make sure that you're finding out who's in your classroom. Find out what makes those kids tick. Ask them different questions and have them give it feedback. A lot of kids don't like when adults talk at them. Number one, you have to be able to find out who those kids are. Okay, and being able to read the room as you go throughout the school year. Obviously, we all know you want to be able to greet your students, and you have to be able to read their body language when they're coming in. Those first few minutes of class, if they don't give you that smile at the door, then find out what's going on. I think the second thing that teachers can do is to be vulnerable in the sense of you're being professional, but if you ever make a mistake in class, own it and put it in front of the kids, because they need to know that you're human. For instance, I used to live in the same community that I worked in as a head football coach. And I would always tell my kids and parents, like, hey, if I see you in the grocery store, I'm going to speak to you because I'm human too. We have to better take that superhero cape off, take that costume off that we put on, and show that you can be vulnerable, that you're human also. I've made so many mistakes solving problems in front of the board as a math teacher or doing something incorrectly as a football coach. And right away, I owned it. Hey, guys, I made a mistake. Hey, class, coach made a mistake at this step. How can I fix it? That shows that you're human. That also shows that you're not a prideful person. You're not worried about having the power. The third thing that teachers can do is to really make relevant lessons. Now, I'm not talking about just going into lesson plans. Find out what kids are interested in. So if you know that some kids, as you go throughout your first week and those first months of school, you have a lot of gamers. You have kids who are mechanics. You have kids who are into cosmetology. You have kids who want to go into entrepreneurship. You have to find ways to integrate those types of things into your lessons. It doesn't have to be the entire part of the lesson cycle. It may just be part of the exit ticket. It may be part of the warm-up. It may be an article that has nothing to do with the content. But you're finding ways to grab hold those kids' attention, and you're letting them know that, yes, I do care about the time that we're together in class, but I also remember you telling me, hey, I remember you sharing this that first time of school, or when we were doing the activity, we were getting to know one another. Those 3 things, getting to know the kids in the beginning, being consistent, and also being vulnerable, but at the same time, making sure that you're creating relevant lessons so that kids are excited about coming to your class.
Well, you have to relate to educate, and the research demonstrates this. If you look at At Hattie's research, the social relationship between students and teachers is actually higher than the academic relationship between students and teachers. They need to know that we care. Now, another thing that you talk about, Daron, is helping kids develop an action plan. And I love this because we know intrinsic motivation always is a better motivator than extrinsic motivation. So, how do you encourage kids when you're talking to them to develop an action plan?
The first thing is just being able to write things down, right? I've shared with students, hey, get an expo marker, write on your mirror in your bathroom, just being able to see some of the things that they want to achieve and write it on their mirrors at home, or maybe if they have calendars that they can write on. Another activity I just did with some students of the Magnificent Male Experience of Xavier University in Louisiana was celebrating small wins. And what we suggested for them as an action thing is anytime you have a small win, showing up to school every day on time for a whole week is a small win for some students, right? Being told that they're loved by someone, even in their family, is a small win. Or just being able to turn in an assignment and the teacher said, hey, you know what? You did a good job. That's a small win. So what I suggested was take a selfie and then edit that selfie, describe what that small win was, and save it in your phone. Because some days we know that life happens. And when you need some encouragement, you can always look back at that time when you celebrated a small win, because those small wins turn into greater gains and greater gains turn into big victories.
Well, that's excellent. I'm going to share that with my students.
Yeah.
So here's another aspect. The research shows that 57% of teachers help students with mental health challenges at least a few times a week. Now, we know that we want to refer those, but it's kind of a fact of life of where we are. And so as a human performance coach, how can you help us teachers know how to approach those situations?
All teachers have so many roles that we occupy and fulfill every day. It's just that we don't go to school for all those different roles. We learn on the job, right? I call it earning while you're learning. I used to always ask a student, if I saw a young man or a young woman that looked upset, disappointed, or even crying, I would ask them, hey, do you need to go see a counselor? Because first of all, I want the professional to have that first opportunity. That goes back to that caring thing, because now that student understands that, okay, coach knows that I can make up this work. He's really concerned about me.
Absolutely. You can't teach an upset child. That's what counselors are for.
Some students don't want to go to the counselor. They have a better relationship with you. I just ask them to step out for me for a second. And depending on how much rapport I have with them, I'll just ask them like, hey, what's going on? But it goes back to the first thing I talked about. How much have you learned about your students? As a teacher, I have to understand that those kids come to school and sometimes they deal with so many things from the time they woke up to the time they get to your class that you can't even imagine. So let's make sure that we understand, yes, the content and their education is important. But as you just mentioned, if they're not in their right frame of thought, it's going to be tough for them to learn that day. So I asked them, hey, what's going on? Would you like to share with me? And I also make it intentional that I'm just listening. I try not to even give any solutions, because a lot of students, teenagers, they just really want to be heard. They just needed that space to share with me. I said, now listen, depending on if I give them a solution or not, let's say I didn't give them a solution, I just was a listening ear. I said, now listen, we're going to go back in here and I'm going to need you to participate in class. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've allowed you to let me know what's going on. Unfortunately, I couldn't help you with it right now, but we're going to go in. Obviously, I'm not going to share anything about this conversation, but I really need you to finish this class on top for me today.
Yeah.
And most times, 9 out of 10 times, like, Coach Frank, I got you. Thank you. I'll even ask them, hey,
Yeah.
do you want to go to the restroom, clean yourself up? Do you need to go get some water?
Yeah, I do that too. Just giving them that de-escalation opportunity.
Yeah, you have to be able to do that. Now you got to know your kids, because unfortunately, some kids, you just can't give them that option. So you have to be creative about, hey, do you need to just hang out here for a little while and I'll come back and check on you? Do you want to do your assignment out here? Right? I mean, all those
That's
different
right.
things you learned over the years, we're the ones that can have the best adaptability skills.
These are all things about human motivation and human performance. There's a really important concept called Keystone habits. Charles Duhigg, writes
Yeah.
about the Keystone habits, like making up your bed. That particular habit influences everything else you do in the day. When you talk to kids about it, what are you thinking?
Those keystone habits are developed from small things that you do on a consistent basis. And if you have success, you want to find out, why did I have success? I need to perform those again so I can give myself a chance to be successful again. Notice I said give myself a chance, right? Because once the day is over, you may not get that same type of day again. Be consistent with your development. Do not be afraid to walk through doors of opportunity. Do not be afraid to fail at doors of opportunities. And also, don't be afraid if your timing is not right. Keep on doing what you're doing if it's leading you toward progress.
So Daron Franklin, Coach Frank, F42 empowerment. So much of what we do as teachers is build those relationships, work with motivation, help kids on their habits. Thank you, Coach Frank. Thanks for tuning in to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. Watch the video version of this podcast and catch my new radio and TV show, Cool Cat Teacher Talk, on YouTube and a radio or TV station near you. Join my Cool Cat Teacher Classroom Matters newsletter at coolcatteacher.com/newsletter. Leave a review if you found this helpful. See you later, educator.